Speaker number 2. Please help me in welcoming Michael Esposito.
Thank you.
Michael, is there a time frame?
Yes, and Diane will be evaluating me. So this is, I'm just going to jump to the computer to pull it up. This is for my level, this is to complete my level 1, which is supposed to be a 5 to 7.
Okay.
But since we don't have another speaker today, this is also a PowerPoint presentation that I want to do for business owners and just everybody in this room, really. So I'm probably going to go about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes around there. Stop me if I go more than that. And then I'm going to also, I'd like to open it up to a little Q&A at the end. Maybe take 3 questions or so.
Would you like some cards at 10,
Yeah, that'd be
11,
great.
and 12? Maybe?
Yes, that'd be great. So that I can kind of,
Michael, do you want this angled?
that's fine.
Okay,
I
because
just
your
kinda
head's
wanna
cut.
hear it
Your
later.
head's cut off.
Who's doing it?
That's okay. Okay, everybody. So, as I was telling you, weird introduction. Let me start over. Toastmasters, guests. My presentation today is about cybersecurity and attacks and what happens and what do you do next. Go to the next slide here. So these are some of the great attacks in history. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but it's important for all of you to realize that we are all at risk. So let me just take a quick poll of our room here. Who here has a credit card? Raise your hand. All right. Who here has a social security number? Everybody. Name, address, everything. When we look at this, one of the first attacks that we've seen was in 1999 on NASA. This is a government organization, and a 15-year-old broke into their computer systems and was able to disable them for over 21 days. Target, we've all heard about these different attacks and cyber attacks. Yahoo, over 3 billion users were affected on Yahoo. Going on to Equifax and Facebook. Let's talk about Equifax real quick. Equifax. This is all of your personal data. This is all of your credit information. These are your social security numbers, your date of birth. This is everything about you that monitors your credit. Facebook, Yahoo, kind of very similar attacks. What they said in the article that I found was that it didn't expose financial information, but personal data. So everything that's personal about you, this is all stuff that these hackers are able to use to open up accounts. Because when you think about it, one of the security questions that you find is, what street did you grow up on? Well, you're not going to find that in today's data, but what street did you grow up on? Maybe you talked about it on Facebook with a friend of, hey, remember when we were on Parsons Boulevard? My old street. It's already public information. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what cybersecurity breaches are, who the attacks affect, how does a hacker get in, why do cyber attacks happen, why do they do this, and how to protect against it, and what happens now. In other words, what happens next. So here's the definition, long-winded. Simply put, a hacker gets into your computer, gets into some kind of database, and steals information. We're all pretty familiar with this already. What are they stealing? They're stealing confidential information, medical records, social security numbers, credit cards, driver license information, financial information, credit card data. They're opening accounts. You're finding fraudulent charges on your credit card. Anybody ever have a fraudulent charge on their credit card? Right? So you've already experienced it. You've been hacked. You're a third party. Private information, pictures, videos, things of loved ones. Again, going back to those security questions. One of mine, I don't care to tell you, is my grandfather's name, Poppy. They know that. So, who's affected by this? We can all read that, right? Everybody in this room is affected by this. We all are. This presentation is for businesses, but people own businesses. You are people. Everybody in this room is affected by this. Your personal information is out there. I made this list nice and long, intentionally, so that you could really get the point, to drive it really home to you guys, that they are picking up all of your information. They know it all. And yes, I am intentionally scaring you. So assume that your information has been stolen pretty much. And if it hasn't been yet, or if you haven't been notified that it's been stolen, brace yourself. because it's going to happen. So how did this happen? How are they getting into your computer? How are they getting into Home Depot's computers? How are they getting into all of these different databases? One of the most common ways, which I think everybody's familiar with in the room, is clickbait, phishing scams. You know, it's saying click here, or your computer's been hacked. Even on your phone, you might see it, right? Has anybody experienced that on their cell phones? Where they pull up a web page, and then all of a sudden, like, it goes gray, and oh, no, click here, call Apple right away. Don't do anything. Get out of there. That's what you should do. So that's what this is. This is clickbait. And what happens with clickbait is the hacker now has gone into your system. They're pretty much contacting you. They're saying, hey, anybody over there? Give me a call. And they're downloading malware. Malware is the most common threat. What malware is, it's software that gets downloaded into your computer or into your database. And now what it starts doing is recording everything that you're doing. It's recording your usernames, your passwords, the blog that you posted last night. It's recording everything. Don't think that any information is unimportant. Your Google searches are what they're stealing. They're using this information. We're going to talk about why they're using this information. The other thing is cryptoware. Cryptoware is one of the newest things that's happening right now. What they do is they download the malware or other types of software. They get into your system. And with cryptoware, it's a ransom type of activity. It's really wild. I mean, it is the Wild West in our computers right now. And what they do with this software is they download it, and they can actually contact you for ransom and say, hey, pay me X amount of Bitcoins in order for me to release your computer. When I spoke with an expert about this, our very own Adrian, who unfortunately is not here today due to illness in his family, but when I spoke to an expert about this, what he told me is that what they can do, and what they typically do, is they don't care if you pay or don't pay. This is what they're going to do to you. They're going to keep sending electrical currents into your hard drive until it's fried. And your system is gone. It's done. It's over. Which made me think of my first laptop that I had, which was when LimeWire was all the rage. Everybody remember LimeWire? Or pretty much software that downloads music illegally. You can imagine what we're downloading there. And in my hard drive, about a year later, was done on a brand new computer. I never knew why, but when doing this research, I think I know the answer. So this is why they do it. This is a huge industry. That is trillion. $1.5 trillion industry. That's what these guys are making. They are modern day bank robbers. They're breaking and entering into all of our systems. They are stealing all of your information and selling it. They're trading, you see trades? They're trading IP addresses as if they're stock. That's what they're doing. They are crimeware, so cybercrime as a service. They're providing a service. Could you believe this? They're actually providing a service to other criminals to steal your information for them. And then ransomware, which is pretty much the cryptoware that we talked about, that they're downloading and holding it for ransom, and sometimes they're getting payouts because they can. So this is a huge industry, and this is why they're doing it. Ego's involved, the 15-year-old, when I read the article about him, there's a little bit of ego of being able to try to manipulate the system. And in a lot of these hackers, especially when the ego's involved, this is probably the best part, is when the ego's involved, they're doing it illegally and they're a little malicious, but really they're just doing it to do it. And when they get caught, it's called black hat and white hat. The black hat is the bad cowboy, and the white hat's a good cowboy. And they get moved over. I'm sure has everybody seen Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio? And he was nobody? Oh, okay. So right. So he was a fraud kind of guy, con artist, and he got turned, and he worked for the FBI. So that happens too. But for the most part, these people are making a lot of money. So how do you protect yourself? How do you protect your organization? How do you protect your loved ones? Right? Back up all of your data. What you want to do is buy an external hard drive for yourself, or your company should have an IT department, and they should be backing up everything that's on site. So they're backing it all up on hard drives that are right there, present. The other thing that you want to do is download everything to the cloud. We're going to do a Q&A after this. We might have questions about the cloud and how it all works and how it operates and some of the security flaws with it. We'll talk about that later on. But the cloud, everybody, I use the cloud, I use the Google Cloud, and that downloads everything there. These people are experts. We're not. They are protecting this data at an expert level. Now, remember, we should all assume that we are susceptible to a risk and to a breach. So assume that they are too. But these are the ways that you can kind of safeguard yourself. Protect yourself. So making strong passwords, not using Toastmaster 15. Make a strong password. I think we're all guilty. I know I'm guilty of not making strong passwords. They're a little obnoxious. But this is definitely one of the things we should be doing. Two-step authentication. If you're not familiar with this, this is where you get a text message showing, hey, are you on a trusted computer? Is this your personal PC? And it's going to send you a text message with a PIN. You're going to put that in. You should have that on all of your logins. That should be on every single login that you have. And of course, bank accounts and everything. So we're talking about setup alerts. These alerts are going to let you know if there was a transaction done online on your credit card or your bank account. All of you, every one of us should have this set up, this kind of monitoring that's happening. Contact a professional. So I want to give Adrian a shout out. Adrian spent an hour with me going over all the ins and outs about this, and he's very, very knowledgeable. And if any of you need a little help, you should definitely contact him for that. So
Yeah,
basically
I took my laptop over because I was hacked. So I took my
So
laptop
you know, yeah?
and he spent about 2 hours.
Working on it.
Yeah.
He's very knowledgeable.
The company is Hudson.
His is
Infosec?
Hudson Infosec.
And it's 2 words, Hudson space
Hudson
Infosec?
space Infosec, yep. And what his company does, and what companies like his do, is they monitor your systems. In other words, what they're doing is they're seeing what kind of data is coming in and what kind of data is coming out. So if malware has been downloaded into your system, he's able to see that. He's able to see that and stop it from either going further or from them taking the malware out. Or taking, excuse me, not the malware out, or taking the information out. Set up a disaster recovery plan. This gets a little bit more complex and something that, again, you should speak with an expert like Adrian about, but basically it's going through the steps of if malware is downloaded, how do we get rid of it? How do we make sure we re-secure our system so this doesn't happen again? How do we clean our system? Carol obviously can attest to how that's done. This one's speaking to our business owners in the room. Over 60% of hacks happen to our small businesses. So why does this happen to these small businesses? Now, we've talked about Target, Home Depot, LinkedIn, Facebook. We know, all these big companies have been hacked. We know this. But the small businesses are even more susceptible. Reason being is that most small businesses don't think about meeting with Adrian, to use as an example. They don't think about it. It's on the back burner. It's an added expense. It's the same thing with all of us in the room, not all of us, but maybe some of us in the room, who don't think about this kind of stuff because we just assume it's not going to happen to us. And as I said at the beginning of this presentation, assume it will. So 60% happen to small businesses. And what's happening to them? So credit card information is typically what's getting stolen from these small businesses. And what happens is that now, just like Equifax has to do, let's talk about them for 1 second. What Equifax has to do now is notify everybody that has been affected by it. So notify, that's going to cost money. They have to then put a plan into action, a disaster recovery plan into action after they notify everybody. That's going to cost money. They then have to help prevent it from happening again to these users because the effects aren't just present. So your information was stolen. Okay, nothing's happening yet. The effects are down the road. The effects happen a year later, 2 years later, of your information has been traded through that back system that we talked about multiple times sold to other companies, and is now 3 years later being used. Equifax is on the hook for that. I really hate the way I say that word. You're going to help me with that later, Dan. So these are the third-party costs that we're talking about here. Our third-party costs are being able to pay for that. So as a small business owner, this is money that's going to either come out of your pocket, your profits, or your budget. You have to budget for it. The other thing you can do is we have there's cyber liability packages in your insurance program. It doesn't always come with your insurance program, so it's something that you want to ask your insurance agent about, something that your insurance agent should tell you about as a business owner. So once you've been hacked, like we've said, we've already assumed that it's going to happen, so now you've been hacked, what do you do? You're going to set up some credit monitoring, and this is where you're going to see on all of your different credit reports what kind of activity is happening. Credit Karma, LifeLock, you hear about all these different companies. Take a look at them. Take a serious look at them and find out if it's right for you. Now, just real quick, going to the top here, is that a lot of the times these companies, so like as we talked about Equifax and Target and everything, they have to pay to have a lot of this happen. So if you don't have this going on, you might want to look into that a little bit further. Credit lock. So you can lock your credit report where you have to give permission if anybody is going to be accessing it. This is really important. In fact, one of the partners at my firm, his information must have been stolen because he was like, somebody opened a credit card in my name. How did they do that? Well, how do they do that? They have your information. That's how they do it. Follow identity theft procedures. So basically, you're going to go through all of these things. These are the procedures here. Change your passwords, order new credit cards. These are real simple things. The things I really want to highlight here, though, are the last two. Staying up on it. We're all on the internet. We're all reading blogs. We're all reading the newspaper, the Poughkeepsie Journal, the news, everything, right? We want to find out what's going on in our community, what's going on the other side of the world. We want to find out all these things. That's great. We should know that. We should know all of that. But we should also know what's going on in our internet, in our computers, in our World Wide Web. We need to know what's going on in there. So you want to stay informed, stay up to date. Don't overwhelm yourself. There's no need for that. But get to know what's going on in that world and how to protect yourself. And then speak with a professional that deals with it in real time. And what I mean by that is somebody like myself right now. I'm dealing with it in real time. I'm learning about it today. I'm learning about it right now. I'm not talking about something that happened 5 years ago. Of course, there's stuff that happened 5 years ago. We're talking about the solutions for it today. Or someone like Adrian, who deals with it in real time. He deals with it on a regular basis. We're not talking about your friend that retired from, I'm sorry, IBMers, that retired from IBM 15 years ago and is like, well, I know about computers. Well, you do know about computers, and you probably have a leg up on everybody. But we want somebody who's dealing with it today. We want somebody who's dealing with the problems that are happening today because it's an ever-evolving industry, this hacker industry. And so these are some of my sources, and I wanted to share this with you guys. One, obviously, to give credibility to the presentation, but two, these were some really great sources that if you Google them, they're probably going to be very helpful in terms of what I just talked about with you guys. The Poneman Institute put out a really great report, and in all of my research, they are referenced regularly. So they're really a good one to follow and take a look at. And then some of these other, Consumer Report here, of course, and this guy, Scott Schober, he's got a PDF with 11 tips on what to do after you've been hacked. Pretty much kind of going through the rundown here, but all just stuff to try to help you guys educate yourselves a little bit better. And that's all I have. Thank you. So I figured since we have a few minutes, I would take a few questions if anybody has any about this. This information, just so you know, when I was doing the research on this, is just incredible. It's crazy. It's scary. And I can talk about this for 3 hours because it is just, there's so much information to share. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to myself. Adrian is a great resource for us. Reach out to him, and then I'll take 1 or 2 questions if you have any right now.
I'll just make a statement. I mean, aside from the cost of having Adrian look at it, which was modest compared to the hours that it took me to unravel what had happened to my computer. I mean, it took me at least 5 or 6 hours that night because I felt trapped to, your system's going to explode, and started writing a check until I realized it wasn't going to Microsoft.
Right.
Because they gave me, they said, well, you can validate this. Here's a phone number directly to Microsoft support. And sure enough, I called the number on a separate phone, and they said Microsoft technical support.
Wow. Yeah. So they have a
so
really
they have it
great
down,
system.
I mean,
They got it
talk
down.
about a slick package.
And did they reach out to you in terms of the clicking? Were you looking up something from Microsoft, or did they reach out to you?
No, I got a
pop-up.
A pop-up.
And so that's everybody. That's your first sign.
Yeah.
Is unless it's kind of just the same way with phone calls. Unless you're calling that credit card company, you don't take the call. It's the same thing with this. Unless you're reaching out to that website.
Yeah, well, they had a countdown clock, so I panicked.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and I should know better. I spent a lot of time in the field.
Right.
You were mentioning something about IBM, and recently I think it was the Navy or the Army, were looking for a private cloud system, and they had a bunch of different companies' proposals for the level of security that was needed for this private cloud, and the only company that had the level of security was IBM, and I suspect that some people, you know, this whole business of security has to deal with money, because if you have different people putting together cloud systems, and some of them have less security than others, and yet we don't know. We don't
Well,
know the
but
level
let
of
me interrupt. The IBM payroll system was hacked about 5 years ago.
So unfortunately, there's no more
I
time.
don't know your point.
I do have to end hard at 12:30 here, but just to your point, just to make it very clear to everybody, when I spoke with Adrian about that, because that was ADP, and in fact, in real time, he was telling me ADP was being hacked. And so, to your point there, is what you want to deal with when you're talking about cloud systems or off-site systems to download your information or secure your information. You want to deal with companies that solely deal with that, not companies that are dealing with a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You want to deal with companies that are only dealing with securing your information, because that's what they're doing all day. And as we already talked about, you can still assume that they might get a breach. But thank you all. I appreciate all your time today.
Okay, you know, it's interesting, Michael was saying about getting phishing. And I will tell you that I've had many, many experiences. One more recently was the acronym for Program Quality Director with District 53 is a PQD. And our old website said at d53pm.org.